Welcome to Crosscut Now, the show that takes you beyond the breaking news and brings awareness to stories affecting communities. In today's episode, we talk with Crosscut politics reporter Joe O'Sullivan about the curriculum pushback targeting Washington school boards and teachers. We'll also get a look at what inspired a Vancouver, BC fashion designer turned tech entrepreneur to pursue her passion again. And new COVID-19 vaccines will hit pharmacy shelves soon as the winter illness season is ahead. I'm Paris Jackson. Today's top story, we're digging into the pressure and pushback by some groups over what's being taught in Washington schools. There's a national culture war and pushback against curriculum and policies aimed at school boards, teachers' unions, and educators over LGBTQ+ individuals and people of color. This summer, a group of residents grilled the Edmonds School District Board during their regular meeting on whether the district was conspiring to distribute puberty blockers to transgender youth. This past year, like many school board meetings in Washington, those who attend are not there oftentimes to chime in on the superintendent's report or the state of the school district's budget, but rather to discuss LGBTQ+ issues or Black Lives Matter. State School Superintendent Chris Reichdell tells Crosscut he thinks the level of aggression and the ability to get to a teacher is different. A research report by nonpartisan nonprofit RAND Corporation this year noted teachers face limitations not just from lawmakers in states that are restricting teaching in books, but teachers most commonly pointed to parents and families as a source of the limitations they experience. Crosscut politics reporter Joe O'Sullivan delves into this growing issue happening right here in several Washington districts. Welcome, Joe, and thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Joe, set the stage and tell us about when these calls for change in curriculum started to happen.
Well, I think people, if you've been watching around the country, there's been a nationwide pushback on the LGBT community, Pride Month, trans individuals, and you've seen limitations on teaching and stuff in other states. Of course, that's not happening here in Washington. We have Democratic majorities in the governor and the legislature. So you're not seeing things like that here. But locally, in school districts around the state, you're seeing groups of parents or maybe church congregations show up and push back against LGBT policies or curriculum, Black Lives Matter Month, things like that are taking place at the schools.
Joe, you spoke with people from around the state, including an Olympia teacher who was essentially targeted by a group of parents and regarding her work and her connection to a BIPOC resource group. Tell us briefly about her and others.
Yeah, so, when you look around the state, for example, up in Edmonds, the Edmonds School District, there's been a group of people coming to public comment, often for more than a year, sort of speaking out against transgender individuals, saying they worry that a health center at the school is going to dispense gender-affirming drugs. Back in June, down in Kitsap, at a high school there in Kitsap County, some students wore t-shirts saying, there are only two genders, and it sparked some outcry within the community and within the school, and the school did a review and everything. And down in Olympia, there's a group of concerned residents or parents, and they're going to teachers. They find their email addresses and stuff, and they sort of know about their career, and they said, to this teacher who worked in one school district and who was worked with like the Black Student Union, said, we know you used to work at that stuff here, or over here in the Olympia School District now, because we have concerns about how this is happening here. And that teacher told us, it was the first time in their career that they'd ever had, somebody, kind of sit down, write them a letter anonymously, sort of indicating that they knew, who she was and what she was doing, and sort of, questioning what she was. Of course, a lot of this stuff, policies set by school boards and by the state and not by individual teachers or anything. So, the teacher felt like they were being, targeted in the course of this.
And while these conservative groups may have the loudest voice targeting certain communities and groups of people, are there other groups speaking out against this rhetoric?
Some of the teachers' unions are, but it's, it's not getting a lot of comprehensive coverage. With controversial issues like this, I think the school boards are sometimes reticent to chime in. They're trying to keep things in the district calm. And one of the things that people in the story tell me is that, the divisions are so deep now that, you may have a teacher in a school district that doesn't like the curriculum that's being taught. And so they're pushing back. So even, teachers are pushing back, or two students are going to school, and they have these very deep, divisive political views now, and they're clashing, and so it's sort of getting at the sort of the community fabric a little bit in a way that it hasn't a long time ago. In fact, in the case of Edmonds, I talked to a former school district member who was on the school district board 15 years ago, and she said, we never had conversations like this. We never had public comment. It was, it was about the budget, or maybe a little bit about what sex ed was going to be like in school. But this kind of ongoing thing that really started during the pandemic, you had resistance against the lockdowns and mask orders and stuff. And some of that energy is translated now into some of these issues.
Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us, and we appreciate your reporting. If you're interested in more of Joe's full story, all you need to do is go to crosscut.com. A local fashion designer shelved her first love. More on why a health scare sparked her journey to return back to the sewing machine. A fashion designer turned tech entrepreneur journeys back to her first love to bring future noir to her new outerwear collection. Fashion designer Katrina Hess found inspiration and opportunity in the somber and dreariness of the Seattle rain. Back in 2010, she debuted a cyclist-friendly line of military-style raincoats called Made in Soto, homage to her soggy bike commute between Georgetown and Pioneer Square. Some years later, a unique opportunity presented itself and she switched gears back to tech to co-found a dating app. But it wasn't the first time in that industry. Hess took classes at Vancouver Film School, sparking an interest in graphic design that landed her first tech job in the late 90s. A personal health scare last year was, as she calls it, a reckoning. Hess remembers asking herself, if we only have X amount of time, am I doing the thing that I love? This fall, Hess will launch her debut line for House of Daggers. It's a brand new studio collection focused on outerwear with high collars and futuristic vibes. We're approaching the winter months. You'll learn how state health officials say you should prepare for COVID-19 and other illnesses. As temperatures begin to cool, state health officials are hoping Washingtonians heed lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic to stay healthy. That means getting up-to-date vaccinations to navigate the winter season. Soon, updated vaccines for COVID-19, the flu, and RSV will be on pharmacy and medical clinic shelves. Health officials hope people will get vaccinated and continue hygienic habits to protect themselves and the public from the spread of viruses. The State Department of Health says it's time to recall what we all learned about mask wearing, hand washing, and respiratory etiquette. It will likely take Washington medical providers several weeks to receive these vaccines. In the meantime, health experts urge people to make appointments now to get prepared. Health officials are changing the messaging around the immunization against the COVID-19 vaccine, calling it a shot instead of calling it a booster to help people associate it the same way they think of their annual flu shot. I'm Paris Jackson. Thank you for watching Crosscut Now, your destination for nonprofit Northwest news. Go to crosscut.com for more.